Good evening. This is the Round Table, and I'm your host, Sandy Powell. I have two gentlemen here sitting on my couch, gracing me with their presence. I have one from a younger age and one that is of an older age that's going to speak to the same subject, which is pastoring here in the 21st century. I'd like to welcome here on my platform Pastor Adrian Chester from Bellwood Baptist.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
and my very own pastor and husband, Prophet Prathan Powell, here pastoring at World Changes Tabernacle. Thank you for being here.
Well, it's an honor to be with you, darling.
Oh, good.
Oh, that's
and
so
it's
sweet.
just, oh, I know, isn't this sugar-filled? Well, it's always good to be able to talk to leaders. I think that that's one of the key to understanding your roles is to speak to those who have to actually operate and deal in these roles. And so pastoring in the 21st century, how difficult is that for you? Let's just go to the stuff that's difficult, because the easy stuff takes care of itself. What are some of the challenges in here pastoring in the 21st century?
Well, I would start off just giving context. I'm 27 years old, and I've been pastoring 3 years, and I was a part of a transition with the congregation. In our day, we would call it established, traditional Black Baptist church situated in Columbus, Georgia. And so the challenges or opportunities that I've faced in the past 3 years may be different from someone who's been pastoring in the same context, but much longer and through different generations. One of the key points that's always recurring as it relates to where I serve and what I've experienced is defining what church is and how we are to be the church. And so there's so many there have been so many definitions and so many models of church that we sometimes you can have 10 people in a group and all of them give you 10 different definitions of how they feel or observe the church. And so just there has to be a constant retelling from a biblical perspective of what church, and when you know what church is, you know that it's not something that we do, but it's something that we be and become.
That's right. And so you're saying in the sense of people have mimicked what they feel the church is, and so we have not got the understanding, the biblical understanding of actually that we are that church and that we ought to live out this life as Christians, in living, and not necessarily in context as a church, as a body. Right.
Yes, ma'am.
Pastor,
Well,
what do you say here?
When Chester was born, I was starting the church. I just found that out just a few minutes ago, so that tell you the age difference. I'm 53 years old. I'm the pioneer of a non-denomination ministry. In fact, we were one of the first to build a church from the ground up as a non-denomination church in my era. Time, coming up with the pastor Wayne Baker, coming up with the Reverend Hill, Rudolph Allen. Rudolph Allen, those guys, they also did some major work in their time. So for me, the challenge was trying to keep a non-denomination church abreast with structure, because when you hear non-denomination, you think of holiness, you think of Pentecostal, you think of that mainstream. The non-denomination is the same, but the operation is a lot different. Right. Where the Pentecostal, the Church of God Christ will be speaking in tongues. Well, we believe in speaking in tongues, but we believe in having order. So me coming out in my time was the teaching on like Fred Price in his time, which made it complicated and difficult in this era, because this region was used to the hooping and the hollering, screaming the matches and stuff like that. So God had to do something different with me, but yet allow me to blend in what's happening in this region here. Right.
And so you both sound like you're both saying in some ways that structuring, giving knowledge and wisdom, kind of understanding as to who the people that you're pastoring, to kind of structure them to know what the Bible is saying as to who they are. They're not limited to just a body of people coming together. They're not limited to our outward showing in tongues and things like that, but was really teaching the people that you're pastoring that they are a church of believers, a body of Christ. Is that what you both are? Because it kind of sounds like you're both saying the same thing. Structuring was the main challenge that you're having.
Yes,
Well,
man.
along with the liberation to do it, and not to feel intimidated about who you are. Me being a young pastor at that time, at age 28, in Chester, 27. So the dynamics are there. I mean, the same time frame of age was there. So I've always was classified as this young preacher. You know, I was, you know, in the layman term, a young Rudy Poo. You know.
So did you get classified there, Pastor Chester? Did you get classified as the young preacher?
Yes, ma'am. And I think just based off of how I operate or the circles in which I have operated, there's a misunderstanding what it means to be a young preacher.
Tell us.
I know some people who are 50 plus,
Yes.
and they're still classified as the young preacher. And so I believe, you know, biblically, the church has always experienced errors of redefining. Even from the early church in the book of Acts.
That's right.
There were many people who thought the church was this, but said, no, you know, the church is this. And so we are only a part of the church history.
Right.
100 years from now, 1,000 years from now, people will be studying the formation and the reformation of the church of the 21st century.
Exactly.
What we got wrong,
Exactly.
and what we got right. And so I sense that there's always going to be a generational divide, because of the gospel is not catered just for if you're over this threshold of living. And so where there are differing generations, there are going to be different values, there are going to be different understandings, there are going to be different ways of doing things. And so what the center of the gospel message is, all of y'all come and hear the principles that if you live by, you all can make this thing work.
Right.
But with that redefining, many times we say, well, the church is what we've always done, and this is how we know it, instead of being open and saying, okay, we can still do what we've always done, but we value how you want to do it also.
And I hear differences from you being a millennial, which is just a generation of people born in a certain time frame.
Yes, ma'am.
And next to you have a
baby
boomer. And so,
the end of the baby boomer.
Yeah, he's at the end, the tail end. But I do know, like what you said, that it's always being defined. Even Paul, along with the other apostles, were shaping it and molding it as they were going along, even in that time. Right up until the 21st century, here we are still defining and trying to shape and formulate our faith to the point where we do have difference of let's say, religious, Baptist, Methodist,
Yes,
you know, Pentecostal, holiness. We have those because they have branched off in small differences as to what they practice, but hopefully, Pastor, hopefully our baseline is the same.
Yes, ma'am.
Which is Jesus Christ.
Yes, ma'am.
The Redeemer of our soul, and that he was crucified.
Yes, ma'am.
Buried.
But early.
But early. How early?
Early.
Early.
Got up.
He did what?
He got
up.
Oh, watch
and
out
so
now.
I see. I'm gonna get both of y'all preachers to preaching in here now.
But every denomination of the Christian faith, this is what a lot of time we varies. The difference is we're trying to have a denomination versus what really leads to the cross. That what Christ did. And once we understand that, Christianity is Christ's followers. How you operate in your thinking process is yours. But if it doesn't line out to what the scripture says, it's error. And what we have to do is keep in mind that we are not against each other because of a denomination or name. We all are Christians. We all kingdom builders. We should be building for the kingdom and not so much the denomination. We got to do the kingdom.
You and what? Yeah, and what as it relates to making this Christian walk what Jesus will have it to be. I mean, that's what constantly what the Bible talks about, what Jesus talks about when he has to go up against the Pharisees and Sadducees, and then you have Jesus and his apostles, that Jesus speaks more about being able to love, not because of y'all have everything in common, but love and work together in spite of there being differences. And so that I really do believe that that's the mark of a maturing church, a kingdom-minded church, a kingdom-minded people. When you don't have to be surrounded by people who agree with you, but are able to still act godly even when other people don't agree with you.
And that too, pastoring, you have people that you pastor with different mindsets. You know, you have the young, the middle, and the aged, all in the same congregation from different eras of I'll say, the way things were done, and having to, as pastors, accommodate there to be able to minister to every level of that. Would you say that this is something you have to take in consideration when you're pastoring? You're pastoring from several levels of generations. Is that something that you're having to do as well?
Well, for me, my foundation has been to preach and teach a simple gospel that all can live by. So yes, the generation of gaps are there, but yet when you're delivering the word, the message for everybody. But it depends how you break it down based on what your message is, how it's going to be relevant to that person that's listening. And even the youngest should be able to bear witness that what you're saying makes sense. When they go home with their parents and say, well, pastor said such, and the family can talk about it. But if you're talking on a subject matter where it goes above their head, there's somewhere you got to find a balance in that. You got to be able to minister to the whole body.
Pastor, you?
I would say the same.
It's the same thing. Just
yes,
got to find that balance. Just stick to the word itself.
Yes, ma'am.
And because we all, young or old, we all deal with the same things in life when it comes down to Christian walk. And so you all just cater there. But we do have personality differences within ministries.
And yes, ma'am. And I think that's where a lot of people get hung up on and miss the gospel, because a certain, you know, we as African Americans in our religious expression, we've most times been caught up on style rather than substance. But every church ought to have the same mission, which is the Great Commission.
Talk to me about that style. What style are you talking about, Pastor?
Well, I mean, it just depends whether the preacher is a, you know, more like a lecturer and giving more of a, you know, monotone particular message, or if one who has a lot of excitement. And we've been on the other end of the spectrum, one who, as we know it, calls hooping. Yeah, and you know, if you take it back, Pastor Powell was giving it to me, that I mean, hooping has been known in the black church, but our music nature of African Americans goes far beyond us to the early beginnings of the church, where the Book of Psalms, the way they remembered was to put things to some type of melody.
Oh, okay, then.
And by them putting it to melody, they could easily chant and recant. And so, I mean, we just kind of, we
tell the story in the song.
Tell the story in the song. And so that's where people get you know, different styles. But I think the gospel, the commission of Jesus, or the mission of every church, Jesus ought to be exalted.
Yes.
And the word ought to be explained.
Exactly.
And when those two things are put in right perspective, there's no, and the word being explained has to be explained not just from the preacher's standpoint, but from the ministries of the church. That we shouldn't just be doing things, you know, we shouldn't, you know,
just to be
who
doing
cares
stuff.
if the children have pizza on Friday night?
Who
cares, you know?
That's right.
You know what I mean? That's good. That's a method, but that shouldn't be the main thing.
Exactly.
You know, if the pizza don't show up, Jesus ought to be exalted, and the word ought to be explained.
And you said something earlier about the church, or doing church versus kingdom living. Kind of fits in there, because style and method of pastoring changes from pastor to pastor.
That's right.
And so you can have one pastor who has this hooping style, as you call it, and then the next pastor, which has a teaching style, which may not necessarily have a tune, because if you turn to your, it's your left, turn to your left right there, that cup can't hold a tune. He couldn't hold a tune in that cup. He doesn't sing.
Yes, ma'am.
But he still
But I fuss.
effective in his, yeah, he's a fusser now. But he's effective in his teaching mode, whereas to someone else, so it can change from pastor to pastor.
Yes, ma'am.
And so you made a statement of churches, doing church versus kingdom. Would you say that fits right in there?
Yes, ma'am. I mean, you can easily, I've come to believe that you can easily get those confused because you're occupying two worlds. That we have the organized church, but the organized church is larger than what 1261 Alta Vista. I believe that's the address.
1241.
1241.
Yeah, that's
a few
right.
digits off, but on Alta Vista Drive, it's larger than these buildings, bodies, and budgets. The kingdom is. When I went to Bellwood, Greater Bellwood 3 years ago, asked the question, if we were to close our doors today, would anyone even know we existed? And what would we be remembered by?
Wow.
That's good.
That's powerful, Pastor.
So, yeah, if we were to go out of business today, would anybody even miss us? Now, we would miss each other from worshiping here, but with the community to say, man, you sure enough know that church down there did some good kingdom work, because this is what they used to do.
Wow.
They didn't just show up for worship. They didn't just show up to serve each other, but they took their time, talent, and their treasure to impact
That community.
the community, so that the community would be the fulfillment of the prayer of Jesus, thy kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven.
Wow.
And so that's the job of the church,
Yes,
to make
sir.
what's going on in heaven. The church is supposed to be the embodiment and the example of that here on earth.
And that has been, I would say, a major letdown of the community, is that the churches are in the community, but yet we're not impacting our community.
Right.
You know, we got people come from all other side of the town to come to our ministry. Quite sure you all have the same. But there was a time where the people in that community went to that church,
Right.
because that church took care of that community. But with the evolving of the churches come on the scene, which is fine, we have to find our way back into the community, making a difference, changing a life, that a life can change the world. And you're not going to do that by being in the four walls of our own churches, happy on Sunday what we got, happy that our seats are filled. But what about those people out there who need to come in, who are not coming in because we're not going out to them?
Would y'all say this is the challenge as pastors, is getting back to that mindset? Not necessarily packing the house out, but actually being impactful in the community as pastors leading the helm of the ship. Is that the difficult turn to get the church to realize that we got to come out of the four walls?
The pastors have to be about the Father's business. You know, we have our nice vehicles, we have our nice homes, but we got to go back to go get God's people, because they're hurting out there.
Yeah.
You know, I need to leave the 99 to go get the one. Well, what is the one? The one that has not come. The one that has not yet had the experience that we have here, because we're only massaging each other here. We got to go out there and get those people and say, you know what, that church, when I was a little kid, made the biggest difference in my life. I was
Right.
going down the wrong road, but the men of that church came in our community, just a hot dog made a difference. I remember our daughter, by marriage now, came to our ministry, and she remained a member because I was serving donuts and juice.
Donuts and Kool-Aid.
Yeah, well, it was the best juice I can afford at the time. But I have a burden now. I have a heart to go out into the community.
Right.
I'm not supposed to feel every seat in this church. That's going to happen. But taking the church to the community. Not taking the city, because no one church can take the city.
No one church
But
is
we got
gonna
to
be
do
able to take the
community
city.
unification together to make a difference in our community.
Right.
We cannot save our community if we don't go to them.
And I think that Pastor Chester, that's a good point, because I hear that sometimes, you know, one church will say they're going to take the city, when in actuality, the two of y'all pastors together are part of the church.
Yes, ma'am.
And so the church being the body of believers, we should take the city.
That's right.
As a whole. Yes. And so I would say that your job as pastors is a very difficult one. I've watched pastors decades and what they have to do. I know even for y'all to be sitting on this platform, I know you had to take out of your time. You had to, you know, schedule it because you got things to do. And so I understand pastoring from having served in there and now married to a pastor. What do you find in your personal life is the most pulling on you as a pastor, you know, in your personal life? Like, what is the thing that really is a downer in your personal life as pastors?
Well, I would say the ability to say no and the ability to step away.
Wow.
And that you cannot, no matter how much your members think that you're Superman, no matter how much you think that you're Superman or Superwoman, Wonder Woman, or Batman, whoever you want to be.
Whatever superhero you want to be.
Whatever superhero you want to be, that you're not. And and so we as a people, black people, and I can only talk about black people because I've been
That's
black
what you are. That's
all
right.
my life.
That's all and I'm going to tell you something,
Yes,
Pastor.
ma'am.
You're going to continue to be
Yes,
that.
ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, sir. We put false expectations on people who are in leadership, especially our religious leaders, of wanting them to always be available, wanting them to always, drop what they're doing. Most times we never talk about the 99 times they came. We'll always harp on that one time.
One time you didn't show up.
That one time you didn't show up. And so through those false expectations that we put on ourselves and that those in whom we serve, not only within our congregation, but also in the community.
Wow.
We have to, I think
And
that was
this is something that people really need to hear.
Yes, ma'am.
Because when we're going through our thing as parishioners, we're consumed with that. And we don't really keep in mind that you have, however many you're serving, you have to consider all of those people as well. And at some point, you're not going to be able to touch everybody directly. Like sometimes you might have to send an associate minister
Yes, ma'am.
to do things. But most time they want their what?
pastor.
I want my pastor.
That's
Where
right.
my pastor at?
That's right.
And it makes it difficult.
And so one thing I'm sorry, passing on, but it's just like I said, being able to step away. Jesus gives, the clear model that when you are being effective in ministry, the only way for you to continue being effective is to step away.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
It's to step away and you be poured into. So,
Well,
Pastor?
For me, for the 28 years of pastoring, it's not eternalizing other folks' issues. When I took a clinical pastoral education to St. Francis Chaplain program under Dr. Brenda Wallace, Professor Wallace now, she helped me to understand in Unit 1 the importance of not process other folks' issues. Let people sit with their stuff.
Right.
Because if you don't,
Right.
you take that home, you get ulcers, you get high blood pressure, you're stressed. When I was in my ministry early years, I was so caught up with the people. Over my meal, my hand be shaking,
Right.
because I had so much going on of other people's matters, trying to be the lawyer, trying to be the judge, trying to be the doctor, giving out, medication advice. I ain't been no medical school. Just, being a mechanic.
Trying to
don't
be
know nothing
everybody's
Don't know how to
everything.
change a spark plug. So it's just those type of situations that you have to understand. You can't do that. You have to have time. I value our relationship as husband and wife in the pastoral level, and we push beyond that. I've learned that I cannot do it all by myself. I thank God for giving me men and women all around me to get the task done, but you can't micromanage and expect the kingdom to be enlarged.
Exactly. Well, I tell you, when you say the power of no, you don't have the liberty or let's say, the freedom to always say no to the parishioners, to always say, not now, this is not time, let me send Deacon so.
I've learned to say, let me pray about it. And that's a complete sentence.
Let me pray about it. Is that the new phrase?
Yes, ma'am.
So that means give me time. And 9 times out of 10, when we call on the pastor as parishioners, these things can be worked out way before you all get there.
Yes, ma'am.
But we have just been spoiled in some incidences that we just want our pastor to be a part of whatever it is that we're going through. Especially when we've grown with that pastor, we feel as though the connection, if he's not there or she's not there or whatever, then it's just going to go disarray. It's not going to work out for us. But do you find as pastors that teaching stability to be able to stand and not necessarily lean on me for everything is a difficult thing sometimes when people are used to that?
Not for me, because that's always been my base of teaching, the independency of going to God yourself. And with that in mind, when I have a situation where a tier 2 cannot handle for me, tier 1, which is the ecclesiasticals, they can't go. But then the people at World Change are already aware that I have not only the obligation to World Changes, but I have obligation to my patient that I see as a chaplain, which is something that I took on as a opportunity to give my love and care to a family or a patient who don't have a church.
Right.
So we've grown together in this. But I've learned to do what I can do and stay there and be okay. If it don't work out, that's fine. Because my biggest problem in years coming to ministry was trying to fix everybody's problem. And I want everybody to love me. Or I spent too much personal time with them, which would take away who they respect me as their pastor. Because if you eat with them and you spend too much time with them, then they'll lose that respect because they begin to see the backside of you in your late, I call it eating the dinner time. You can get free at times.
Right. Do you experience that, Pastor, as well?
Yeah, in the first year and a half, I had to learn the hard way.
Learn the hard way. They hurt. Yeah. Don't it hurt when you learn that though?
Learn the hard way, but you pay for your education. And so it's
He said you pay for your education.
Dropping these little nuggets. If you use them in your sermon, make sure you send me the honorarium.
Please send the honorarium too.
Back here too.
Okay, let me stop. But no, I want you to have that liberty because I think a lot of times pastors don't have an outlet.
Yes, ma'am.
You know, because if you say what's truly in your heart.
Job says the Lord gives, the Lord takes away.
Right.
And if you know that you're right, He'll always fight your battle.
He will. He will do that.
We got to bring us back next week.
Yes, I'm going to have you back.
Yes,
I'm going to have the two of y'all back. But I did want our audience to understand that the one thing about pastors, I have a heart for pastors, is that you all are real. Yeah. You're not some super creature beings. You all have heart. Feelings. You have feelings. You have a mind that can be tampered with. And so I wanted my listening audience to understand that you all too are in need of us like we're in need of you. And so I hope that the conversation that we've had today has enlightened them in some way to know that you too are part of this kingdom and the building of this kingdom. So thank you both for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
I will have y'all back.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, you've heard it here, pastors in the 21st century, the real side of what's happening. And I want us to know that we love our pastors and love your pastor. Love on them and give him that extension. And until next week, we'll see you right back here at the round table.